Hi writers and readers, I'm Christy Stratus, and today we are on to another part of our revision mini-series. I'm going to talk to you today about editing tips I do not agree with. As a disclaimer, please feel free to agree or disagree with me in the comments. This is really just a friendly type of thing where I'm telling you my personal feelings about advice that I don't like that I've heard, and you can feel free to feel the exact opposite way and tell me why. So again, totally friendly, and I'm not really coming down hard on any of this stuff. This is just my experience. The first piece of writing advice and editing advice that I truly dislike was I saw, and I'm not going to say where these things came from. Sometimes they're just things that have been out there for a very long time, and sometimes they're things that come from a specific source. But I'm not going to tell you the source because I don't really want to make anybody feel uncomfortable or anything like that. I had seen a serious video where someone was saying you need to write and edit as fast as you can, as close together as you can, and as quickly as you can. Get it done quickly. And I couldn't disagree more, because the whole point of putting writing separately from editing, you finish writing your novel, you give yourself a couple of weeks of space, anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, however long you're able to give yourself, and then you start editing, is so that you can go in with completely fresh eyes, as fresh as an author's eyes can get for their own work. And then you're reading it at least a little bit from a reader's perspective. Of course, you're going to know some of the stuff that's coming. When you have that time period in between, that's just a gap, when you get back into it, you're able to see just so much more than you could before. And so trying to rush that process is a major mistake in my opinion. And when I have tried to do that, I later see, when I do take a break and go back to whatever it was later, especially a novel, whoa, there are some major flaws in here that I just could not see. I was too close to it before. So I highly recommend not rushing that process and not putting those two things too close together. I've also heard the advice that you should add some lightness when you have a very dark manuscript. It's very dark fiction, dark fantasy, whatever it is. The rule of having to have lightness and that it's not a good book unless it has some lightness to it, I completely disagree with as well. Anatomy of a Darkened Heart is 100% dark. There really isn't much lightness to it, and if there is any lightness, it's still compounded with darkness. Now, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a depressing book. It's certainly not depressing, but it is supposed to really push the characters to the edge, and it is supposed to be dark. Now, if I threw a joke in there, that would really not work. It just wouldn't. So I don't think that that works with the ambiance, the mood that I'm trying to create. It doesn't work with the point I'm trying to create, and it certainly doesn't work with the characters. So I really think that adding lightness is something that either it fits into what you're doing or it doesn't, and there is no rule about it. Just like if you're writing a very light romance or a romantic comedy, you don't have to have dark parts to, shock people into depression. Actually, one of my least favorite romantic comedies was supposed to be hilarious and, oh, it's so lighthearted, it's so much fun. And then, the mother gets breast cancer and it's so depressing and she dies, and I was just like, I would never have watched this movie if you had even hinted that this was going to happen. I was in tears. So anyway, that's my experience. I have some strong feelings about it. As I said before, leave your comments down below. I'm happy to hear someone disagree with me. The advice of always cutting your manuscript down by 10, I've seen it anywhere from 10% to 25%, does not apply to everyone. This applies to people who overwrite. And that's fine when you overwrite in your first draft. You're trying to make sure you get everything out and you don't hamper your creativity. That's fine. But when you say, and I have seen this even in major sources, make sure you always cut your manuscript back anywhere between 10% and 25%, like I said. I'm an underwriter. I always underwrite, and I have to add a lot more details because otherwise we've got more of a skeleton. A lot of things are not explained, and the characters are not developed properly. So if you take my manuscript when it's complete, when I've gone through it and edited and added bits and things like that, and you cut it back, you're not even going to have a novel anymore. It's going to be way shorter. It's not going to have proper development. So this is sort of a nitpicky thing, but I think that advice really was originally meant for people who overwrite, and it's fine to overwrite, like I said, in the first draft, and then you cut it back. Or anybody who goes into major descriptions that are really not necessary. For me, I have to build my story out or else I really won't have anything worth publishing. So that is something that I have noticed that I completely disagree with. Again, it just does not apply to everyone. Here's one that might upset some people. I'm sorry, but basically when you say a scene, a chapter, a book, anything has to go by this structure. No. Anatomy of a Darkened Heart was written outside of the lines of any writing advice that had to do with structure. I have seen writing advice that says if your chapters don't have a beginning, a middle, and an end, then they're no good. If your characters don't act this way, that way, if there isn't a protagonist, an antagonist, or this and that, then your story is not filled out enough. Completely not true. In my book, Anatomy of a Darkened Heart, you'd have a hard time finding any protagonist in there. Really hard time. But that's the point. These characters are complex and they change a lot throughout. There is no one you can look to say, oh, that person's great. There just isn't anybody like that, and that's okay. It works out well. But it's for that manuscript, obviously. So if you say to me, all your chapters have to be based this way, I don't even have chapters. What do you think of that? I don't have any chapters, and that's just the way it worked out. I don't tend to write in chapter format. I have a very hard time trying to end things like that. I have scenes, and usually some are shorter, some are longer, but chapters simply don't work. Breaking it up that way just doesn't work for my particular type of writing. And I have actually seen some people have commented on other works saying this really needed chapters. And I saw someone comment on my work saying this works really well without chapters. So I think it highly depends on what you're trying to achieve. And if we all tried to do the same structure, I'm pretty sure we'd have mostly the same books out there on the market. So I think that if you're a writer starting out and you need some guidance, then structure is a great idea. Definitely look at that advice, take it seriously, go by that, and then see how you feel. But for someone like me, who I know exactly what I want to accomplish, I've been writing since I could write, that simply doesn't work for me, and I don't think anybody should ever feel pressured to go into something like that. But again, I think the most important point about this is that we want to create new things. We want to come out with brand new art and writing. And if we all stick to the same exact structure, nothing new will come out. And it's really important for writing and creativity to constantly expand and to go way outside the borders and the box. I think that working outside of that whenever you can, if you feel so inspired, then that's what you have to do, and that's what's going to make your story great. And if you need that structure, then that's what's going to make your story great. But there is no rule for everyone. So as you can see, most of the things I disagree with have to do with when you put a blanket statement down. Everyone should do this. Everyone has to do that. I do completely disagree with that pretty much for anything in life, but especially with creativity, because that's the whole point. To work outside the lines, to do something new, and to make people think and feel in a different way than they have before. In order for you to have a unique voice, yes, of course you can start out by following other people's advice and then find your own way and see what works for you. Make your own YouTube video and tell me what you think is the best way to be creative for yourself. Maybe someone will see your video and say, hey, wow, I'm gonna do that actually. That's gonna make a difference in my life. And that is such a rewarding thing. That is a really big deal. Thank you so much for watching this video, and let me know what editing or writing advice really annoys you. Let me know down below. Don't be nervous about leaving something that maybe I follow, because this is all just to have a nice chat and to just see what everybody feels. Thank you so much for watching again, and thanks for spending time with me. I will see you tomorrow.